What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Week 12 NFL Power Rankings show. Gonna get right into it here. Please do hit that like button down below. Really helps me. Really appreciate it. Also, make sure you're subscribed for more NFL content just around the corner here. But let's go ahead and get started with the bottom tier here. Two teams in this tier on Bryce Young watch, and that's going to start with the Houston Texans, demolished by the Washington football team this week. You know, they're not getting too much better as a football team, but hey, getting that number one pick just might be the biggest win of all for them. And then the Carolina Panthers are also going to find themselves in this tier. Their defense does this every couple weeks because they have scattered talent. If they get the right matchups, they can put up performances like they did this week against the Baltimore Ravens. But look, they can't move the ball, man. They go back to Baker Mayfield this week. It looked just like they did week one. Screens, bobbled snaps, just a disaster. I do think they deserve to be in the bottom tier here with the Houston Texans. But then we're going to get to our next tier here, and I'm going to call this tier the unsortable pit of despair, because you could really move these guys around. The reality is the ranking of these guys doesn't matter all that much. You're talking about maybe a point between our 30th team here and the 20th team. These guys are week to week. They're not good football teams. And a lot of these fan bases, honestly, have probably checked out at this point. But let's get through it anyway. Starting at number 30, it is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It didn't feel like a -4 week for them, but the teams that were ranked below them did actually show out this week. And the big thing about the Steelers is I feel like if they're going to be relatively competitive, it's got to be with that defense with TJ Watt getting in there. And honestly, the defense got picked apart by Joe Burrow and the Bengals minus Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase this week. So that's a problem for the Steelers. You can't lean on Kenny Pickett to get you 30 points a week. So it is going to be a -4 for the Steelers. And then I'm going to have the Cleveland Browns sticking in the AFC North. I've just kind of had it with believing that this team is going to be right in it every week. I mean, the last 2 weeks have been really tough for the Browns. This defense especially has been one of the more underwhelming units on the season. Stunned that we have not seen Joe Woods get the boot yet. An underachieving unit there. And then, of course, you've got a backup quarterback on the offensive side of the ball. So it's been a rough stretch for the Browns. And then they have one more game here, I think, against the Bucks, and then it's Deshaun Watson time. But they have kind of played themselves mostly out of the AFC playoff picture, which is a bummer, considering everything they invested to go get the Predator at quarterback. Okay, number 28 is going to be the Chicago Bears. I think we can separate how fun Justin Fields is to watch, cheer for his development, be happy for the Bears that they found their hopeful franchise quarterback there, but also acknowledge that this team has lost their last 4 games. They cannot play defense because they have the worst defensive roster in the NFL right now. It makes it very difficult for them to win games. Showed up again this week against the Falcons. Then at number 27, we dumped the Raiders last week, and now we're dumping the Broncos. -6 for the Denver Broncos, another team that I've just had it with them. We've defended them throughout the season, and the defense has continued to play well, just as we've seen. Another game here where they allow 17 points in regulation, but that offense, man. We talked about the Browns' defense being the most underwhelming unit on the season for anybody. Well, it's not as bad as that Broncos offense. The Russell Wilson trade continues to look like a nightmare. They can't get on the same page with these receivers. The play calling, it's been all the same for Denver really since week 1. So they're going to get dunked down here. And then the Raiders as well. Not overly impressed by them. You know, we had them at 31 last week after they went and lost to Jeff Saturday on his debut. Maybe not quite as bad as a loss as we originally feared. You know, the Colts do look scrappy at best, or scrappy at worst, rather. And then they go and beat Denver in overtime. A big Devontae Adams game this week. Defense plays a little better against one of the worst offenses in the league. You know they have the talent to find wins like that, but I don't think it's enough to save this team's season. They're coming way from behind, but they're going to get some respect this week. Then we've got the Indianapolis Colts. Hey, this they got a lot of crap for the Jeff Saturday hiring, but ever since he came in, the run game's been better. The offensive line's been better. They go back to Matt Ryan, who honestly doesn't look washed the last couple weeks. He's been fine. Defensively, they've played much better. The Colts look more and more like that sort of, wild card contender / AFC South contender that maybe we thought they would be coming into the year, but still so much bad film out there this year. Their offensive line, I still don't really trust. So still kind of getting a beat on who this Colts team is. They lose this game late to the Eagles. It was a competitive game. And as far as losses are concerned, I think giving them a little bit of a tip of the cap, despite the loss against a great Eagles team, this feels about right. Then the LA Rams at number 24, second week in a row. This team's going to drop down 4, and now Stafford is injured. This is the season from hell for the Rams, but at least they got a Super Bowl, and looks like their season's going to come to a conclusion here this week as they are 14.5-point underdogs against the Chiefs, which would drop them to 3-8, giving their first round pick to the Lions for the Matthew Stafford trade. Then the New Orleans Saints at number 23, getting a big +6 this week. Huge game from Andy Dalton, Chris Olave. The defense playing a little bit better lately, though against the Rams, it's not that much to give credit for. But the Saints are not a horrible football team, and they've shown all throughout the year, really, that they can move the ball. Still pretty damn far out of that playoff picture, but I think they're rightfully ranked here above that crop that we just went through. Then the Atlanta Falcons, ranking 22nd. And I know their team is a little bit further up standings-wise than some of these teams we're about to reveal, but I just don't trust this Falcons team. Look no further than just a week ago when they lost to the Panthers. I do trust that they can move the ball in sort of random, diverse play calling from Arthur Smith. Defensively, though, just such a lack of talent. I don't think the Falcons are a good football team. This feels like the right spot. And let's move on. The Arizona Cardinals are going to come in here at 21. Tough team to rank here, back-to-back weeks with no Kyler Murray. Let's put that defense in a tough spot. Obviously, the Niners kind of ended up steamrolling them in that game here on Monday night. But I'm expecting Kyler Murray back, and with Kyler Murray, with Hopkins and Marquise Brown coming back, I feel like that defense has shown decent flashes. I shouldn't have to really defend them because they're not a good football team, but for what it's worth, I do think they're better than the likes of the Falcons, the Saints, the Rams. They did beat the Rams last week, remember? So we'll go 21 for the Cardinals. Not an easy team to rank. Then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are going to come in with the 20th spot on bye this week, but they're going to get the benefit of moving up 2 spots here after the Cardinals and Rams lost this week. Now, before we go any further, I got to tell you guys about my new friends at Underdog Fantasy. They reached out to me like 2 weeks ago. They wanted to partner with me on the channel. Super appreciative of Underdog, and I've enjoyed working with them. But I've just started playing Underdog Fantasy, and I got to tell you, it has gotten me back into daily fantasy. I used to play all the time. I never won those big competitions. If I did, I was winning like $4 off of a $2 entry. It's like whatever. But with Underdog, those pick'em contests that you see people putting out on Twitter where it's 4 or 5 players with different over-unders on fantasy points, receiving yards, interceptions, field goals, you name it. Well, you get to pick whatever game you want, whatever props you want, and the payouts can be huge. We're talking 20 to 1, a $2 bet to win $40. So it's super fun. It gets you invested in any game that you want. And I have just loved it. So I'm really excited to partner with Underdog Fantasy. I think you guys are going to really enjoy playing on it. And now, if you use promo code TFG when you sign up at Underdog Fantasy, they will match $100 of your first deposit. You can play along with me as I post my screenshots. And honestly, I think you guys are going to love it using promo code TFG on Underdog Fantasy, and you'll support my channel in the process. So go check it out. Send me your lineups on Twitter. Would love to see them. And let's get back to the power rankings. We have a new tier now into the teens, and this is going to be the frisky tier. For whatever it's worth, these are teams that you definitely have to show up against. They're not going to back down from a fight. And even if I really don't see anybody in this team as very serious Super Bowl contenders, they're average to good teams, I suppose. And that is going to start for me with the New York Giants. We're going to drop down 5. Now, a big part of this is the injuries. They lose Wan'Dale Robinson to an already beat up and just poor receiving group after a breakout game from him. They lose Adoree Jackson, who has been an incredible force for them for multiple weeks here. That's huge because defensively, so much of what they do well is the blitzing and the man coverage and matching up with those guys. Not going to be able to do that now, especially when you look at that cornerback depth chart and how big it drops off after Adoree Jackson. So those are pretty freaking major losses for them. Not to mention they've lost 2 out of 3. We know the limitations of this roster. They go and really get slaughtered by the Detroit Lions this week. And for a team that has 2 games against Washington, 2 games against Philadelphia, they got to play the Cowboys here on Thanksgiving. Could be a quick turnaround to another loss. It's definitely starting to feel like, for me, like the New York Giants' magic has worn off, even though they are a 7-3 football team. So -5 for the New York Giants feels like the end of a fun season, in my opinion, even if they kind of back their way into a wild card spot. But even then, that feels kind of unlikely with that schedule. Okay, the Detroit Lions, however, +6. This is kind of playing out exactly like we talked about in the Lions deep dive, where I had them starting very poor and then ending up getting over their season win total of 6.5. They have won 3 in a row. And the biggest thing for the Lions, because the offense kind of is what it is. Good play calling, good offensive line, scrappy on that side of the ball. Jared Goff's got his limitations. Their offense really hasn't changed much throughout the year. But defensively, man, they are really starting to figure stuff out. It's been little individual breakouts, and even more importantly, breakouts from young defensive players. We've seen Kirby Joseph emerge this year, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jeff Okudah emerge early this year. Obviously, they got Aiden Hutchinson playing well. And then this week, it was Aleem McNeil, one of the more dominant defensive tackle performances of the season, a year 2 defensive tackle that I loved. They are finding guys at all levels of this defense starting to play better. And that, to me, is like best case scenario for the Detroit Lions, is that they start to find some young talent for that defense that desperately needs it. And it's helping them stay in these games where they weren't. Well, they were always in games, but it's helping them finish these games that they weren't able to finish earlier in the year, as their defense was historically bad. So +6 for the Detroit Lions. And honestly, they're not entirely out of the playoff picture. Still feels unlikely that would happen, but they're playing really good football right now. They do have to play the Bills here on Thanksgiving. And then the Green Bay Packers at number 17, going to drop down a spot this week. Obviously, the loss to the Titans there on Thursday Night Football puts them in desperation mode as far as trying to rally this season. But this is still a very frisky football team. They took down the Cowboys last week. I actually like a lot of the stuff the offense has been doing the last couple of weeks. The offensive line's been much better. They get Christian Watson going, looking to get Romeo Doubs back this week. That's significant. I know everyone wants to highlight the fourth quarter misses from Aaron Rodgers, and obviously that's not ideal, but 7 of his last 8 quarters of football, he's played really good football. So I don't think it's all bad for the Packers, but it's definitely not great. The defense, can't believe Joe Barry is still the defensive coordinator. They shouldn't have hired him in the first place. Some of those third down calls, the lack of creative blitzing, it's just horrible. So they're going to drop down 1. Still a frisky team, though, that I don't think anybody's looking forward to playing the Packers, but obviously a lot of flaws with that team as well. Then the New York Jets at 16. They seriously might have the best defense in the NFL, and they certainly have been since about week 4 on this season. But unfortunately, none of that's going to matter if Zach Wilson's playing like this. He's not a good quarterback. He's not a starting caliber quarterback right now. He's late on reads. He's overthrowing balls. He's underthrowing balls. He's now got like questionable pocket presence that he didn't really show at BYU. It is really all bad with Zach Wilson right now. It's getting almost impossible to hold on to the flashes that he shows. It's actually eerily familiar to what Sam Darnold looked like for the Jets. So, I mean, you love the defense. Almost found a way to win them that game, but even with the way the offense is playing, they lose. So they're going to drop down 3. No one wants to play the Jets right now, but they're capable of losing to a lot of teams if they're playing offense like that as well. The Washington Commanders at number 15. Not that I'm really impressed by the win against the Texans, but they took care of business. It's really the disappointing weeks from the Jets, the Packers, the Giants that is going to push the Commanders up here. We'll see how this team's season finishes. I think you get Chase Young back. Heineke's just not very reliable at quarterback, but they can do some stuff on that side of the ball. They are playing much better defensively. They're in a good position here to lock up a playoff spot, and you bring Ron Rivera back for another year, and I guess hang around as a mediocre team, mediocre playoff caliber team, I suppose, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, +3 for the Commanders. Things are pretty good in Washington right now. And then the New England Patriots at 14, they are going to wrap up this tier of frisky teams. A lot of these guys are in the playoff picture there. You've got to shout out Bill Belichick, man. I know he's not going to win Coach of the Year, but the job he's doing with this roster, the Patriots have the number 1 defense in EPA right now. And while, I think the Jets and the Niners and the Cowboys have a little bit more dynamism with their defense, you can't argue with the results of this Patriots defense. They almost single-handedly win them this game here. And it's just incredible. I mean, Matt Judon's playing great, but beyond that, it is a motley crew of average starters. And Bill Belichick has turned that into, at worst, a top 5 defense in the NFL, showing yet again why he is the best coach, not just in the history of football, but maybe in sports history. It is remarkable that this team is 6-5. I also have them at the top of this tier because their offense was not as bad this week as maybe the final score would indicate. They only get 3 points offensively, but a couple missed kicks in really windy conditions. They end up going for it on a 4th down on a nice drive that stalls it out. So they did have 300 yards of offense, which with a defense like this, that's a playoff caliber Bill Belichick Patriots team. They're a good football team, though they have a serious lack of explosiveness, which is really an issue with all 6 teams in this tier. But then we get into our next tier, and these are going to be my shaky playoff teams, really just untrustworthy playoff teams. All 3 teams in this tier have really nice upside and explosiveness about them, but teams that have been just, for various reasons, I don't necessarily trust them to finish strong, basically. But that's going to start with the Seattle Seahawks, and it's not that they've been inconsistent, it's just, this is the overachieving team as far as the remaining teams here. That defensive roster just is not very good on paper. It is a young offensive line, Geno Smith. There's just a lot of factors there. I think I'm giving them proper credit ranking them 13 here, but I think everybody has a little bit of skepticism with the Seahawks, and I think even Seahawks fans have that moving forward. They've done some great stuff. Really excited to see if they can finish it. Geno is one of my favorite storylines in recent memory in the NFL. So high hopes for the Seahawks coming off the bye week, but they are going to drop down 1. I know fans hate it, dropping on a bye week, but I think the Chargers earn this. They have played much better football the last couple of weeks, even in 2 losses. I know the losses, but against 2 of the best teams in the NFL, the Niners and the Chiefs, right in it against those 2 teams till the very end. And a lot of that is Justin Herbert starting to play with more dynamism especially this week. This was Justin Herbert's second highest average depth of target on the year at 9.1 yards per target, and made some beautiful throws deep down the field. This was the first time since week 4 that they averaged over 7 yards per depth of target. So opening up the playbook a little bit more with Keenan Allen getting in there, which I think is really big. I like some of the stuff they're doing defensively, getting a little bit more man and blitz heavy, despite that not being Brandon Staley's roots. I've been impressed by the Chargers' ability to sustain success, relative success, and not fall apart after all these injuries. They've shown a mental toughness that the LA Chargers don't normally have. And now hopefully getting a Keenan Allen, getting a Nick Bosa, a Joey Bosa, hopefully getting Mike Williams back soon. I like the direction the Chargers are headed, but of course, how much can I trust this team? Not a whole lot. Then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to wrap up this tier on bye this week. They have been the inconsistent one out of this group. You know, the Chargers have been injured. The Seahawks are just new, but the Bucs have just kind of underperformed, and they do have a certain lack of explosiveness. But we know that roster is so deep, so talented, playing much better as of late, and in the driver's seat in the NFC South. But I don't know if I have full trust in this to be a Super Bowl potent team, which really is going to start with our next tier here. So our next tier are going to be playoff contenders. And these are teams that I think are firmly playoff teams in a normal season, and also teams that if a couple things go right, I can totally see these teams winning a Super Bowl. And you might think, oh, doesn't that apply to the Bucs? Well, in a normal season, this Tampa Bay Bucs team hasn't played like a playoff caliber team to this point, even though we know what they're capable of, right? So number 10 is going to be the Tennessee Titans, who are climbing up. And it might not be the big rise that a lot of Titans fans want to see. You know, I still think they have their limitations with Tannehill and that offensive line. But, man, you got to be impressed with what the Titans have done. They smashed the Packers right in against the Chiefs last week, taking it to overtime. But now things are starting to change with how I view this Titans team, because number one, it's just more, and the more and more we see Mike Vrabel coach this defense, the better and better you feel that they're going to come out and put up a great effort on that side of the ball. But the biggest thing here is you get Ryan Tannehill back healthy, number one, but they're starting to find some playmakers now, right? You got Treylon Burks, looks great. Healthy, out there, explosive, adds a verticality to that offense that they haven't really had. My dude Chiga Okonkwo is like a mismatched weapon. Derrick Henry running his ass off. So I think the ceiling on the Titans has expanded. We knew that defense was good, but for them to be able to move the ball more consistently, Tannehill had his best game on the season by far. That changes things for the Titans. If they play like they have, especially last week against Green Bay, they can beat anybody. And therefore, they can win a Super Bowl if they put on a run. So the Titans are going to climb into the top 10, and I hope that's enough praise for Titans fans that tend to be a little bit rowdy in these rankings. But then we're going to have the Baltimore Ravens actually dropping down a spot. So I know Lamar was sick this week, could have hurt his prep against this Panthers team, but the offense just has really taken a knockdown, and we've seen this from them in the majority of their games without Rashad Bateman. They're just not that same explosive Ravens team. And Lamar has been, let's face it, he's had some great moments, but he has been very up and down this year. So the offense isn't fully trustworthy. Ronnie Stanley also leaves with another injury in this game. But you also do have to credit this defense that has been absolutely remarkable. Just getting more familiar with the scheme, I think, number one, but getting guys back in there healthy and then adding Roquan Smith to the mix. It's a great defense out there. They're definitely in that top 5 conversation. So I'm not trying to shred the Baltimore Ravens here. It's just that I've been more impressed by their divisional counterpart in the Cincinnati Bengals, who are going to jump just ahead of them here. I mean, Joe Burrow really has been playing at a top 5, borderline elite quarterback level since they've made these big scheme changes. They go more shotgun, more gap running, And I mean, when you got a quarterback playing like that, you know you're going to be in any single game. This is the defending AFC champs. Now, the thing here with the Bengals, well, number one, they're getting Jamar Chase back too. Like, I think that's a big reason I'm comfortable putting them over the Bengals. Over the Ravens. But this defense is not the defense that they had last year, so that is a little bit of a ding on them. They really missed Chidobe Awuzie in that secondary, so they are putting a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow. But man, this offense has been so much different since those adjustments they made around week 5, really abandoning the whole under center wide zone, Shanahan, McVay system that Zach Taylor came over with, and going more spread that Joe Burrow is just so much more comfortable in. And then at number 7, I do have the Minnesota Vikings dropping down 3 spots this week. I mean, that was an absolute shellacking. And it also doesn't help that 2 of the other teams around them here had really impressive weeks. I don't think too much differently about the Vikings than I did last week, to be honest. I've always had concerns about that offensive line. I know Kirk Cousins has his limitations. I know that defense has some porous spots on it, even if they have big-time playmakers. The Vikings are a really good football team. I think 7 is a very fair ranking for them, but they have some problems as well with their team that were certainly exposed this week. They're taking on the Patriots here Thursday night, potentially without Christian Darrisaw. It's going to be another tough match for the Vikings, but an opportunity to rinse off that ugly performance and get back on track here. Then we get the Miami Dolphins are going to stay put on bye this week. Not a ton to add on them right now. Was so impressed by them over the last couple of weeks. And then the San Francisco 49ers are going to come in at number 5. This offense, I feel like every single week is getting more and more familiar with how to maximize all of these playmakers, and that's really scary. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo's playing really good football, just getting the ball in these guys' hands, and they're, like I said, this was a week where they managed to get all 4 of those guys going. McCaffrey, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk. They are going to throw haymakers at you left and right. Oh, and by the way, they have a dominant defense with Nick Bosa, who is just eating people up front. So I'm definitely in on the Niners. I've been in on the Niners, and a dominant win from them on Monday Night Football, along with the Dallas Cowboys, who had a dominant win in Minnesota. This is peak Cowboys. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get a game like that again. This is, though, a display of everything this team is capable of. The pass rush up front, dominant. Micah Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year. Comes out right out the gate, forced fumble. Now, he is day-to-day right now. We'll see if he plays here on Thursday against the Giants. But he's incredible. Trayvon Diggs had a really good game against Justin Jefferson. And then offensively, Dak played, in my opinion, his best game in like a year. That was a really good Dak Prescott game, just so calm under pressure and dropping dimes down the field. I feel like it's been a while since we saw the complete package from Dak Prescott. So he's getting comfortable within this offense, getting fully healthy there. The run game, really good, mostly from Tony Pollard, but Zeke's got his flashes in there as well. This is a very complete football team. They have answers for everything, and that was a statement win by the Dallas Cowboys. And then the Philadelphia Eagles holding on to this number 3 spot, though that was not an impressive win against the Colts. Really, the last 2 weeks, the Eagles have felt much more vulnerable. Obviously, last week they lose to the Washington Commanders, and this week, just not a good offensive outing against the Indianapolis Colts. I do think, Hurts was not bad in that game. Don't get me wrong. He threw some really nice balls. The clutch drive at the end. I'm not trying to dog on him, but you watch that game, there's certainly moments where he's kind of regressing back to some of those old tendencies of bailing from clean pockets and leaving meat on the bones of passing plays. And for the most part, he couldn't really attack the Colts through the air. Outside of some, a couple really nice throws, but again, I'm not trying to dog the Eagles. I'm ranking them number 3. I don't know how many people are still going to have them number 3. They hold on and beat the Colts, and that defense continues to be really good. But it does feel like they're a little bit more vulnerable in the last couple weeks, and for that reason, I am going to take them out of that top tier that includes, of course, the Bills and the Chiefs. So the Bills got back on track this week. They lit up the Browns defense, and offensively, Josh Allen got back on track as well. I know the Bills have lost a couple over the last few weeks, but I've never really been worried about the Bills. They have so much talent. Every Super Bowl favorite is going to have their hiccups for the most part. I think they've had theirs and are going to continue to roll here on Thursday against the Lions, you would think. And then the Kansas City Chiefs got to be number 1, man. I got some flack on Twitter, although I think it was about 50-50, and people that agreed with me and people thought I was crazy. I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback that's ever played in the NFL. I'm not talking about most accomplished or career resume and all that stuff. Just eye test, film evaluation, the dude's incredible. He plays in structure, certainly good enough. He's not Brady or Rodgers in structure, but everything he adds, both on the impromptu, all the stuff that we know about Mahomes, the scrambling, the wonky throwing angles, fine throwing windows that you just didn't think existed, but the clutch from him as well, just never phased. They get the ball with a minute and a half to go. A field goal ties it, a touchdown wins it, and it's just no problem. He has the answer for everything. If you go man coverage, he'll run on you. If you play too far off, as we saw in this game, he'll hit the underneath read. If you play too aggressive and try to get up on him, he'll hit you over the top. It's just incredible. And he did that without 2 of his top receivers in this game, in the biggest of moments, Sunday Night Football against the Chargers. So, man, I mean, the Chiefs are rolling really offensively. They do enough defensively. I do think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. So that's going to do it. We are out of here. Another quick plug. If you guys are buying tickets to any sporting events or concerts, do use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. You can save $20 on that first purchase and support my channel in the process. But other than that, really appreciate it if you could just hit that like button. Really helps me out. Make sure you're subscribed as well. And we'll see you guys later this week for more content. Next up will be a new episode of my Fully Inflated Football podcast. Another plug. You can follow that in the link down below. But peace out. Thanks for watching.